Hello everybody, welcome to Monterey. Richard Michael Owen here at the RM Sotheby's Classic Car Auction, and I'm really looking forward to this. There's some absolutely tremendous lots. This is a really important sale for RM Sotheby's, if not their most important of the year. So there's only the top tier blue chip collectibles, I think about 150 cars. Let's go see what's around here. Let's get into it. All right, here we go into the first showroom. This is the Andrews collection. It's a father and son collection curated over the last 15 years, and some absolutely amazing British cars along the edge of the wall there. And the highlight of the collection was definitely this DB4 GT Zagato. It's the 18th of only 19 made, and this car is really neat because it has unique features first ordered by US Commander James Murray. One of them being the shell gray paint. Another one being that really cool grille up front. It's kind of a wide pattern front grille. It makes this car distinctive from all the rest. Now, James Murray obviously didn't want to compete in this car, so he had it fitted with real door glass and real chrome brass window frames instead of the plexi aluminum units we see in the race cars. This car also has custom taillights. You can see the taillights behind there, kind of a cathedral setup. And one thing the Andrews collection did is they put 16-inch wheels in this car, which really set it off from the rest. Now, this car is kind of the result of a 1990s restoration, but it's held up well. The engine's been modified from 3.7 to 4.2 liters, and it really is the ultimate Aston Martin GT of the 1960s. Yeah, nearly $10 million. Wow. So right beside it is the car it's based off, the Aston Martin DB4 GT. This one's selling for almost $4 million. This just happens to be one of the 5 lightweight cars. What makes it lightweight? Well, it had lightweight seats, exhaust, springs, and it was a really high specification car, 3 Weber DCOE 45s. Now, this particular car is really a cherished model because it was prepared for the 1961 Sebring race, but it arrived too late. And so this car never really saw any extensive endurance racing. So it's really, I guess, more original than some of the other ones out there. Now, this was restored in the late 2000s, kind of a race-ready preparation. It has modern safety gear and a roll bar for SCCA racing. And yeah, pretty nice example of an Aston Martin DB4 GT. Okay, here we go. Jaguar's ultimate sports race cars. Yes, this is the D-Type XKD 530. It didn't sell in Monterey, but it's an interesting car in and of its own right, so we have to have a look at it. Now, this car was a privateer car first delivered to Finland, believe it or not. It was raced quite extensively in Finland from 1955 through to the 60s. At some point in 1959, it was returned to the factory, got a new engine, and a lot of other components. And so what had happened actually is that the original body and engine ended up becoming the basis of another car. So for decades, there were 2 XKD 530s up until about 2003, when CKL Developments was finally able to have a customer who acquired both cars claiming to be XKD 530. CKL Developments ripped both the cars completely apart, found out which parts were original to XKD 530, and then put them all back together for the first time. And here we go. You can see under the hood here, a lot of components here looking original. Not a lot was remade. And yeah, pretty interesting history, a colorful history. You're looking at a D-Type here with upgraded parts from the factory in 59, but it was actually delivered in 55 to Finland. Okay, the next 2 cars here are continuation cars. Now, I really don't like manufacturers meddling with their history, but this E-Type looks amazing. It's a spectacular build. Jaguar Classic claim it as being built in 1963, but everybody knows this car was built in 2014. And the build quality is just astounding. I think these cars were £1.5 million, so took a bit of a bath on this one, selling for just over $1 million USD. Now, Aston Martin, we're up to the same games. Look at this. In 1992, they made this thing called the Sanction 2 Zagato DB4 GT. And again, they were watering down the company's history, but they're spectacular pieces in and of their own right. And it's kind of nice to have these options out there if somebody actually wanted to go racing. They could put these things on a track and not worry about the value as much. But as we can see, this one sold for 2.8 million, so it's not exactly the kind of thing you're going to buy and thrash around a track. Next up, we have a custom-bodied Aston Martin DB2 4, and this is really the result of a gentleman by the name of Wacky Arnaud. He was known for the Arnaud Bristol, the Arnaud MGs, and in 1953, he bought 6 chassis from Aston Martin and shipped them to Bertone for custom bodies, and this is one of 2 that were done in the Drophead Coupe form. It's totally unique and distinct from the Aston Martin design language, and it kind of has that look of like a big Italian tourer. Looking inside here, I love the metal dash and the arrangement of all the gauges and everything. It's definitely a neat car. In 1955, it was actually shown at the Pebble Beach Concourse, and we can see here it fetched $1 million USD, and I think that's pretty appropriate. That's about 4 times the amount that it would have got if it was just one of the regular coupes from Aston Martin. Here's the last car I want to look at from the Andrews collection. It's a Vanquish Zagato built as a tribute to the DB4 GT Zagato that the Andrews had. And I think having this car next to the DB4 GT Zagato in the same garage is just utter perfection. Okay, now on to the main event. This is the main showroom for RM Sotheby's. And here they are displaying the cars like fine art. And in front of us is the 1970 Porsche 917. Unfortunately, it did not sell, but this was definitely going to be the most expensive car of Monterey if it did. So this 917 was the hero car for the McQueen film Le Mans. It was depicted as the overall winner, and it's kind of like the star car of the whole film. So in that regard, it's a pretty important 917. But even before the movie, the car was an original race car that was raced at the 1970 Le Mans by David Hobbs and Mike Halewood. So I think McQueen was going for a real authentic kind of look and sound for the movie, and he achieved that by buying this real race car and putting it in the film, which is, I think, just utterly bloody brilliant, and it adds a lot to the film. And now in more recent times, this car has been quote-unquote reinstated as a 917K Coupe, and I think that's what that means is that it's had a new body made. And that was all done by Paul Azante. He did an exacting, complete, no expense spared restoration on this thing, and it looks utterly amazing. It's the only Porsche 917 I look at and I see kind of a satin, semi-gloss kind of look. All the rest are nice and shiny. And yeah, it definitely looks really beautiful in detail. A real museum piece. I don't know if it's ever going to see the track again. Probably not. Next up is this Ferrari 275 GTB competition car. This is how it looked when it raced the 1967 24 Hours of Le Mans. It won its class outright for Scuderia Filippinetti. Now this is a fully restored car. It comes with a spare engine, look at that. And it achieved $7.7 million US. Now for the same price, RM Sotheby sold this mid-engine V8 Ferrari known as the 268 SP. It's the only one like this in the world. It came from the Pierre Bardon collection, and here it is, lovely restored in Monterey. Okay, next up is one of the most spectacular sights from the sale, and that's this bare metal Miura S from 1971. What's really neat about this car is we can see the front and rear clamshells all in aluminum, and then the steel structure is all down to bare metal. Now this car had a lot of front end work, and I guess during the process they wanted to show off how good the front end work was done, and so it was decided to leave the thing in bare metal. And yeah, look at this, you can see the lead is part of the doors and the chassis structure, and this is how, look, they used lead to make the gap in the doors just correct. See the spot welds here on the chassis too. The engine was completely rebuilt. Now the aluminum work here was done by Beckman Auto Works. It took them 8 months to get the aluminum looking like it does here. See the rear clamshell there is all in aluminum. And the aluminum and the steel have kind of a different look to them, which is kind of interesting. Now this car sold for $2 million US. It really kind of shows that Miura prices are on the rise. And yeah, it's one of the great cars to have in any collection. Yeah, I just love the look of this bare metal Miura. What a great idea that was, and it definitely sold for all the money. Here we have a pretty amazing Porsche. I'm not a Porsche guy, but the original paint scheme on this car really caught my attention. It's like this two-tone fade from metallic dark blue to turquoise, which matches the interior. And upon investigation, I found out that this was special ordered by a gentleman named Tillman Broadbeck. He was the assistant to the CEO of Porsche at that time, and he had this car custom made for himself. You can see those Recaro seats in there. Those are custom special Recaro seats. And the interior was completely outfitted in turquoise leather. It was just such an amazing car to see these fades, and it looked like the paint was original too, and this car had been well looked after its whole life. And it just caught my attention. It's just one of these things where you go to some of these events and you just fall in love with cars and you're unprepared for completely. And this car, oh man, it just looked absolutely stunning. Look, you can even see the knobs there were covered in turquoise leather. Really, really amazing, unique car, and I think that's why it did fetch $362,000. Yeah, on the bumper here you can see slight imperfections showing you the originality, and so I think what we're looking at here is actually the original paint on the car. Here we go, nearly $2 million for this XJR-15, and this is kind of a footnote in Jaguar's history. Back in the early 90s, TWR and Jaguar created a company called Jaguar Sport. They made 53 of these carbon fiber tubbed, really Le Mans race cars, of which 27 were road going examples. And this car is an absolutely cream example. It's one of the road cars. It has only 78 miles from new. So real museum piece that's never been driven, a real reference car, and really unique. It's not often you see one of these XJR-15s. Okay, just gonna have a look at one of the modern supercars and see where this market's headed. So this is a pretty expensive $3 million McLaren Speedtail. These were really kind of produced last year as McLaren's halo car, kind of a modern McLaren F1 for their top collectors. They only made 106 of them, and these cars are well known for their expensive options. All this carbon fiber here and there, I'm sure, was a really expensive option. And if we look up the top here, we can see this roof scoop. This was actually an option they offered after the production, and I heard that that's $150,000. It definitely makes the classic Jaguars look cheap by comparison. Now these cars have the most dramatic rear overhang. Look at that. And I guess that's kind of to show off the top speed capability. Huge rear diffuser, absolutely amazing looking English supercar. You can see the Speedtail script there and all this carbon fiber. Pretty expensive stuff. This one sold for $3.14 million. Looking really good here in the California sun. Oh yeah, and I just snuck in here. You can see the central driving position. We have the driver, and then behind them, two passengers on either side like the McLaren F1. Okay, here we go. A 1963 factory competition Shelby 289 Cobra. Amazingly, this car started life in AC in England, and it was shipped to Shelby in 1963 and fitted with all the Sebring factory competition options, magnesium wheels, side exhaust, roll bar, the whole works. And in 1963, it was driven by Bob Bondurant and Ken Miles for the USSRC season, spanking the Chevrolet Corvettes and eventually winning the title for Shelby. Of course, CSX 2129 is one of the most important Shelby Cobras in history, and that's why it fetched $4.13 million US. Here's a 1961 Jaguar E-Type Roadster, one of 385 outside bonnet latch Roadsters. And because of that, it generally fetches a higher premium than the later cars. There's just some unique features that you see on these early 61 cars that you don't see anywhere else. Now this one was finished restoration in 2014 by Dave Ferguson of Images Auto Body, who does some really high-end work. The only thing I could see is that the front hood was quite tight on one place in the firewall, and it chipped the paint, and I don't know if that's why the car only fetched $257,000 US, but it does seem slightly soft for a 61 Roadster, but lovely car nonetheless. Next up, we have one of the most desirable short wheelbase Porsche 911s. This is the 911R. In the late 60s, Porsche were really trying to take the 911 to the extreme. They lightened it as much as they could. They put the motor from the Porsche 906 in there. And unfortunately, it was never homologated. So the car was limited to private teams running in rallies. And here we see this one in its 1967 Tour de Course livery, $3.3 million. That's a lot of money. All right, I'm gonna finish up with this 1910 AC Sociable. I really don't know much about this car, but I find it really unbelievable that the industry started with cycle-fendered cars like this in the central streets of London. And it really showcases the diverse range that RM Sotheby's are willing to take on and show off in Monterey. And man, those two showrooms were pretty amazing, showcasing those cars like works of art. Now, I'm really curious to see what everybody thinks about this format, showing just some of the highlight cars at these auctions, because if this is what we're interested in, I can produce more of these in the future. Just look at the cars here lined up for sale on Friday. This video really only scratches the surface. There were really a huge amount of amazing cars available in this sale. All right, well, that concludes my tour of the RM Sotheby's auction here in Monterey. So many great cars. I just love those Jags. I wish I could take that continuation lightweight E-Type home with me. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. See you later. Bye-bye.